working with him since 2016. Two papers about the waves. The first one about the source of small scale gravity waves, and the second one we started the medium scale gravity wave in the propagating into the ionosphere. That I believe that is going to be part of the talk of today. Dr. Sivakandan, he moved from India to Japan in 2019, and now he's preparing to move again to work with Dr. Jorge Schau at the Institute of Atmospheric Physics in Leibniz. And I hope you appreciate. I guess it's a good topic of research, good topic of aeronomy. So, Dr. Sivakandan, you have by about 50 minutes, 50 minutes to give your talk. And when you finish, we will have a couple of minutes to discussion. So, I would ask to the audience, please switch off the microphones, okay? And if you have some comment, something, you can use the chat as well. Okay, Dr. Sivakandan, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Paulino, for this wonderful opportunity. And good morning to everyone. Today I am going to talk about the atmospheric gravity dynamics and the coupling processes, in a particular emphasis on the MLT region and the ionosphere. So my talk will be mainly focusing on the, as Professor Paulino informed me, there are several master students. So my talk is mostly concerning some fundamentals and then the advanced research which is going on this topic and this region. So I want to give a brief introduction about the neutral atmosphere and ionosphere, and what is gravity waves, and what is the importance of gravity waves, why should we have to study about the gravity waves, that kind of information, and how to probe the gravity waves in the mesosphere, thermosphere, ionosphere region. And since my work is mainly based on the ergo measurement and the supporting instruments, so I want to give little more information about the ergo observation and its advantages. Then I will move to the gravity waves in the mesosphere over thermosphere. I mean, what we know, that kind of information. And then gravity wave impact and the ionospheric electrodynamics, such as the generation of the equatorial plasma bubble and the medium scale traveling ionospheric disturbance in the middle latitude ionosphere. And finally, I will also want to discuss with you some of the unresolved problems and what are the way we can go forward, that we can do in the discussion session also. So you know very well, this is the thermal structure of the Earth atmosphere, or the neutral atmospheric temperature profile. If you are seeing this temperature profile, you can see from the ground to around 15 to 16 kilometers, the temperature is decreasing with respect to altitude, and this region is called as troposphere. This is the more dynamical region in the Earth atmosphere, and all the weather phenomena such as cyclones and wind jet streams, so many kind of dynamical activities are happening in this region, and this is the region which is directly connected to the human activities, day-to-day activities. So whatever the day-to-day life, our influences are there, which can affect this region mainly at the first cut. And then
excuse me, we are still on the first slide.
Hello?
We are still on the first slide. Are you now on the third slide? It is not moving. The slides are not moving. So please, if you could make the full screen of the PPT, it will be great.
Okay, now can you able to see?
Yes, now I can see. Yes, thank you.
Above the tropopause, the temperature is started to increase. That region is called as a stratosphere, where the ozone layer is present, which is absorbing the hazardous ultraviolet radiation, which is acting as a shielding from the harmful ultraviolet radiation. Then if going above 50 kilometer, then the temperature started to decrease with respect to altitude. That region is called as mesosphere, and this is the coldest region in Earth atmosphere. And in the beginning, some 80s and 70s, this region is called as ignorosphere, because if in the sense of measurements, usually people used to use the radio sondes in the olden period, which can reach up to 35 kilometer, something like that. And above that, they also can use a satellite measurement. So the satellite measurement can be possible above 100 kilometer. So this in between region, 50 to 100 kilometer is fully ignored by the observation. So this region is also called as ignorosphere. But the recent advancement in the satellite as well as the ground-based measurement is improved. Now we have so many instruments to measure this region also. Still, certain things are lacking. I will explain in my later slides. So the above mesopass, the temperature again started to increase. That is called the thermosphere. So now this is the hottest region in the Earth atmosphere. So this is the ionosphere, Earth ionosphere. You can see in these images. The red lines, the red dotted lines shows the solar maximum time, how the electron density is varying. And
Sivakantan, sorry for interrupting.
Yes.
We can only see the interface, so you have to manually change the slides from the screen. So we are not actually seeing the presentation, at least me. So we are seeing the interface of the PowerPoint software. So you have to manually change to the next slides. We are not seeing the presentation as such. We see the slide number 2 now. Yeah, now it is now in the slide number 3. Thank you.
Yeah. So only slide, the images are not visible. Hello.
Yes, we can see the images, but maybe if you added some kind of transition or videos, we may not be able to see it. Just the as you see it in the interface.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And now at least slides you can see, right, with the mixing of the interfaces. Hello.
Yes. Slide number 3.
Yes. So this ionosphere is divided into three layers, like D region, E region, and F region. These 3 layers are different wise, composition wise as well as the dynamical wise, because the D region negative ions are present, and the motion of the ions and electron in the D region is mainly controlled by the background wind, and which is let us assume from 60 to 90 kilometer altitude, which is called the D region, above which the ion motion is controlled by the background wind, and the electron motion is controlled by the magnetic field lines. So the electrons are magnetized above that altitude. So there is a differential motion between the ions and electrons. So this gives a wonderful dynamical phenomena, like a dynamo region between 100 to 120 kilometer or 150 kilometer. So that is the dynamo region in the Earth ionosphere. So above which, in the F region, both ions as well as electron motions are mainly controlled by the magnetic field lines. And if you are seeing this image, there are red dotted lines, which is representing the solar maximum year, and also there is a large difference between the daytime as well as the nighttime. And the green line shows the solar minimum year, and there also the electron densities are varying. So from this you should know that the electron concentrations are highly solar cycle dependent. The solar maximum years, electron concentration is more in the ionosphere. In the solar minimum year, the electron concentration is less in the ionosphere. Similarly, daytime the electron concentration is more, and the nighttime electron concentration is less. and especially when the sunlight is absent. The night time, D region is completely vanished and the E region is almost partially vanished. So my talk is about the atmospheric gravity wave. What is atmospheric gravity waves? In the atmosphere, there are several kind of waves with a period from few minutes to several days, among which the gravity waves are one which is generated due to the balance between the atmospheric buoyancy force, which is due to the pressure gradient, and the earth gravitational force. So the buoyancy force and the earth gravitational force act as a balancing force for the gravity waves. Please note that the atmospheric gravity wave can sustain only the statically stratified atmosphere. And the mesospheric region, which I am going to present, is acting as a surf zone for the upward propagating gravity waves because of its low temperature and high winds. So mostly gravity waves are generated in the lower atmosphere due to various source mechanism. For example, topography. In the case of topography, like mountains, in the different location, mountains are there. When the wind is flowing across the mountain, it can stop the wind, so which can act as a seed for the generation of the atmospheric gravity waves. And similarly, convection, this is one of the efficient source mechanism over the equator as well as the low latitude region. There, a lot of convective activities are occurring. As you know, the intertropical convection zones are present in those regions. There, the convection is one of the dynamical phenomena. There are several processes are involved. In the convection, there are three prominent mechanisms for the generation of gravity waves, like latent heat release. For how the latent heat release can be the source for the generation of gravity waves. As we know,
hello, Shivakantan. Sorry for interrupting again. It's still in the slide number 3. You may have to change manually. Sorry.
Okay. Now,
Siva, when you move to the next slide, please go to the left side and click on the slide, please, because you start to talk about the next slide and you are still in the previous one. Yes. Thank you.
okay. So the convection.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Convection is one of the potential source for the generation of gravity in the equator and the low latitude region. There are three prominent mechanisms in the generation of gravity waves by the convection. One is the latent heat release. When the air parcel inside the convection is going up, at certain altitude, it will release the excess of heat. So that can generate the gravity waves. And other case, the convective structure, the whole structure from bottom to down itself can act as a moving mountain. So that can stop the background wind flow, then that can generate the gravity waves. Similarly, the mechanical oscillator. During the convection, there will be a large updraft and downdraft in the convective bloom. So that also can generate the gravity waves. Similarly, the wind shear, especially in the extratropical region, there are jet streams present. Those jet streams there will be a large shear in the adjacent layer of the wind. So that can generate the gravity. That also can generate the gravity. Similarly, the wave-wave interaction and breaking of wave in the tropospheric altitude also can generate the gravity waves. So all these waves can propagate upward. Some of the wave can be generated break in the lower altitude itself. Some can propagate in the upper altitude also. For example, this cartoon shows the generation of gravity wave in the lower atmosphere due to the convection, and which is propagating in the middle atmosphere, and it is breaking in the mesospheric region. The breaking of the wave can affect the background temperature, wind, composition as well as density. So it also can cause the turbulence in the mesospheric region. Sometimes the wave which is not breaking in the mesosphere can propagate further into the thermosphere ionospheric region, and sometimes it can act as a seed perturbation for the equatorial plasma bubbles in the equatorial region. So why should we have to study about the gravity waves? As I told you, the gravity waves studies are important because they are carrying energy and momentum from troposphere to the upper atmosphere. While breaking, it deposits its energy and momentum to its ambient, so which can alter the background temperature, wind, density as well as composition. So it is important. Similarly, the gravity wave have significant contribution in the generation of large scale feature in the mesospheric temperature as well as in the wind, such as the mesospheric semi-annual oscillation and the stratospheric biennial oscillation as well as the mesospheric quasi-biennial oscillations. So the information of background condition, I mean what is the temperature, wind, in addition to that, sources of the gravity waves, where these gravity waves are originating, I mean which source is having maximum contribution at which location, those kind of information. And the propagation characteristics of gravity waves are very much important to parameterize the global circulation models. So sometimes the upward propagating gravity waves can act seed perturbation for the generation of equatorial plasma bubble in the equatorial ionosphere, as well as the generation of medium scale traveling ionospheric disturbances in the mid latitude ionosphere. So from all these points we can conclude that gravity wave studies are having some important influences and important consequences in the atmospheric science. And why should we go to study about the mesosphere thermosphere ionospheric region? So this cartoon, if you are seeing, it is one of the wonderful cartoon made by the Kyoto University people. See, there are three major fountains in the equatorial ionosphere. One is the material fountain. You see the lower atmosphere, there is a material fountain. What is mean by the material fountain? See, whenever there is a convection or some kind of updraft processes are there, then it will carry not only the energy, the mass movement also will be there from one region to another region. For example, from the troposphere to stratosphere, some of the atmospheric constituents like gases can be transferred from the troposphere to the stratosphere and stratosphere to the troposphere. For example, ozone is rich in the stratosphere, which can be downward moved by the dynamical process in the stratosphere. Like similarly, stratospheric tropospheric water vapor can be lifted to the stratosphere. So this is called the material fountain. Similarly, if you are seeing the middle atmosphere is the region between 10 kilometer to 100 kilometer. So in the middle atmosphere, there are wave activities. See the green line and the red line. So the wave activities means it is not there is no mass exchange between these region. It is remotely controlled. So the waves which is carrying the energy now. So when these waves are breaking in the middle atmosphere, which can change the temperature, wind, density, composition, so which can alter the middle atmospheric general circulation, which is called the energy fountain. And as I told, in the ionosphere, E region is a dynamo region, which can generate the electric field, right? So due to this wave activity and tidal activity in the E region, which can affect the electric field, so that can create the fountains. Like when there is a eastward electric field in the equator, which can uplift the plasma, then the plasma will go up, but it cannot go for long because the gravity is acting downward. So that plasma should come down. Since the plasma is magnetized in nature, they cannot fall as it is. They should fall along the magnetic field line. So because of this, you will see there are very nice studies using the satellite observation there is a low density, low electron density in the equatorial region and the high electron density in the low latitude sector, around 15 to 20 degree geomagnetic latitude. So this is the plasma fountain. And another important process in the equatorial ionosphere is the plasma bubbles, the reduction in the electron density. That also I will discuss in my later slide. So these are all the important dynamical processes which is occurring in the upper atmosphere also. So it is essential if you, in order to understand the atmospheric dynamical phenomena as well as the coupling between the neutral and the plasma, we should study the middle mesosphere, thermosphere, ionospheric region. So in a nutshell, as I explained to you, like troposphere, mesosphere is also considered one of the dynamical region in the Earth atmosphere. This region is highly influenced by the lower atmospheric forcing in addition to the solar forcing. And this, so this study is very important. Like there are several dynamical processes in this mesosphere, like gravity activity, planetary activity, tidal oscillation, and the waves are breaking. Due to this wave breaking as well as the chemical heating, there will be a enhancement in the temperature, which is called the inversion layer, that also occurring in those region. Additionally, the meteor from the space, meteor ablation also happening in the MLT region. So these all the processes are controlling the middle atmospheric general circulation. And also the MLT region from 80 to 120 kilometer, that is a region for the generation of potential secondary gravity waves, which can propagate further into the thermosphere ionospheric altitude, and those waves can control the electrodynamics of the ionosphere as well. So the understanding of the ionospheric electrodynamics and the plasma neutral coupling processes are essential to improve the satellite-based navigation communication system. So how to probe the mesosphere, ionosphere, thermospheric region? So far there are variety of observation, variety of instruments. So some of you is like in situ measurement. In situ measurement is nothing but, for example, a rocket. In the rocket, we can fix the instruments, whatever parameter you want to measure. Those instruments you can fix in the rocket. You can launch the rocket, so it will go through that region. So that suppose if you want to measure the temperature or the density or pressure, so those kind of sensor you can keep. You can measure the ambient atmosphere, but the rocket measurement is very costly. You cannot launch continuously rocket. How many times you can launch? It will take more human active effort as well as the more money. So it is very difficult. And the other process is the remote sensing. Remote sensing in the sense there is no need to send any instrument. You can send, you can measure this region remotely from the ground or from this space, like active remote sensing using the radio waves. For example, ionosonde will transmit a spectrum of radio wave from 1 megahertz to 20 megahertz. So when the frequency between the ionospheric plasma and the radar ionosonde frequency, when matches, it will be reflected back. So using these techniques, we can get the bottom of the ionospheric layers. And other techniques are radar. Radar is radio detection and ranging, right? So there are several kind of radars like mesosphere, stratosphere, troposphere radar, high frequency radar, which is mainly used to study the dedicatedly to study the ionosphere, and meteor radar and the medium frequency radar. Those are other techniques to study the MLT region. But the problem with the radar is it is more expensive, and you need more manpower to maintain the radar system for long run. Then active optical instruments like LiDARs, light detection and ranging. There are two kind of radars, like Rayleigh LiDAR, which can measure the temperature and density from above 30 kilometer to 80 kilometer. So the stratospheric region and lower mesospheric region can be measured. Additionally, the resonance LiDAR like sodium, iron, and potassium LiDAR. This sodium, iron, potassium, these are all the rare constituents in the MLT region due to the meteor accumulation. So using this resonance lidar, we can measure the temperature, wind, and density of these constituents in the MLT region. So, but the drawback with the lidar is it can be only operated in the night time mostly. So another technique is the passive optical instrumentation, like air glow measurements, like air glow photometer, which is a point measurement, and air glow imager, which is the space, you can get the spatial information, and air glow spectrometer, we can get the variety air glow spectrum from different altitude, and the Fabry-Perot interferometer, from which we can measure the wind. Wind is one of the important parameters to quantify several dynamical phenomena in the MLT region as well as the ionosphere, but this is the lacking information so far. And spaceborne measurement like SABRE satellite, WINDY satellite. So these are all last 20 years, these two measurements are giving wonderful information about the ionosphere called the mesosphere, their temperature structure, all those information we are getting nowadays. So you can see the lidar image, all-sky air glow imager, and the multi-beam scanning lidar. Using this, you can get the wind information. Then air glow. What is air glow? Air glow is a continuous emission of radiation having atmospheric photochemical processes as its origin. So based on the emission mechanism and solar zenith angle, the air glow is divided into three types. One is a day glow. In the presence of sun, photo dissociation mechanism is having dominant role in the emission processes. Similarly, and night glow emission, in the absence of sun, recombination mechanism processes are having dominant role in the emission processes. And the third one is the twilight glow. What is twilight glow? After immediate sunset or before sunrise, photochemical as well as the recombination mechanism are having dominant role in the emission processes. That is called a twilight glow. And on the other hand, aurora is a huge and a bright light emission in the high latitude, is a special case of air glow emission, but it is caused due to the charged particle precipitation in the high latitude. So this right hand side figure shows some of the prominent emission layers in the MLT region, like hydroxyl emission, a peak around 87 km, sodium emission peak around 90 to 92 km, and O2 emission which is peaking around 94 km, and O1S 557 nanometer emission which is peaking around 97 km. So you can see whatever I told, it is a peak emission altitude. If you are seeing these layers, they are overlapping with each other. So this is the air glow emission spectrum. You can see some of the predominant emissions like 557 sodium and 630 nanometer emissions and all, and the bottom shows the hydroxyl emissions, which is the brightest emission in the mesospheric altitude. And what is the advantage of using air glow measurement, in particularly air glow imager? Nowadays, very cheap air glow imagers are coming with selective filters, so it is a cost effective, and the air glow observation is we can get the data every 3 minutes or every 2 minutes, like that. So the high temporal resolution data we can get. So it is very effective to study the very short period waves or the very high frequency waves. And also it is very useful to study the mesospheric Bohr event. It is little bit different from the gravity wave. It is a kind of gravity wave, but it is the dynamical features are slightly different from the normal gravity waves. Like similarly, frontal structure and wall event, those kind of feature can be studied using the air glow images. And equatorial plasma bubble, their horizontal structure can be studied in the equatorial ionosphere. Similarly, medium scale traveling ionospheric disturbance in the mid latitude can be studied. Additional advantage of this air glow observation is that from this we can directly get the horizontal wavelength and phase speed, phase propagation direction. All those information we can directly get from the airglow imager. If you are seeing these images, you can see the 557 nanometer emission. There is very nice wave structure. You can see the bright and dark bands around 97 kilometers. And the right hand side top panel shows the reduction in the aerial emission intensity, which is the representative of plasma bubble in the 680 nanometer emission. It is around 250 kilometer emission altitude, and this is another brightness enhancement in the airglow emission. So, what are the characteristics of gravity in the MLT region? So, using 3 years of all sky airglow imager data, 557 nanometer, which is peak around 97 kilometer, we studied the gravity wave activity only during the equinox month, March and April. So, we used 3 years of data. From that, we could get almost some 50 gravity wave events, and then we characterized their wavelength, phase speed, propagation direction, and also we carried out an exercise to study or to identify their source mechanism, where these waves might be originated, like that. So, you can see the top panel, the wavelength. Wavelength is ranging from 10 kilometer to 45 kilometer, and more than 50% of wave events are happening. The wave wavelengths are ranging from 10 to 25 kilometer, and additionally, remaining 22% of wave events are falling in the category of 30 to 35 kilometer wavelength range. Then, this is the phase speed. Phase speed is varying from 20 meter per second to 90 meter per second, and more than 78% of wave events are having phase speed less than 50 meter per second. It is only the low latitude station Gadangi. And the propagation direction, you see the propagation direction. If you are seeing the propagation direction, most of these waves are propagating either northeast or northwest. Only few waves are propagating in other directions, and the period of these waves are varying from 4 minutes to 20 minutes. And using the ray tracing techniques in collaboration with the Professor Paulino, we also try to identify their source region, and we could see that most of the waves are terminating in the lower atmosphere, and we also try to connect with the possible sources, and our study shows that it is mostly originated from the convective activities. Then the seasonal variation of the gravity waves in the mid and high latitude. How the seasonal wise, how the gravity wave activities vary. As I told, in the low latitude and equatorial sector, the gravity wave activities are more during the equinoxial month. But if you are seeing the mid and high latitude, the gravity wave activities are more during winter and summer. The x-axis in these figures are showing the day number. If you are seeing during equinox, the wave activities are less. The top panel shows the MF radar wind variance. The top.
Shivakantan, can you present again the same? Can you, because somebody else came in, so yours withdrawn. Just share the screen again. Share the whole window again.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. I am sharing. Can you able to see? Hello.
Yes, it's okay.
Now?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it's okay.
Yeah. So the top panel shows the MF radar, meteor radar wind measurement. So the top left panel is the high latitude station and antennas, and the right hand panel shows the Julie sir. You can see in the mid latitude there is a very clear variation between the equinox and summer and winter month. winter and the summer month, the gravity wave activities are more in the mid latitude. And they also start the authors try to study using the model simulation for the same two locations. They would successfully reproduce that the wave activities are more in winter and summer than the equinox in the mid and high latitude. So what could be the reason for this? See, this as you know, this is the wind, and it is this cartoon shows the wind and gravity wave interaction, especially for understand the critical level filtering. What is critical level filtering? It is nothing but when the phase speed of the wave is equal to the background wind, then the wave will be absorbed into the background. That is called the critical level filtering. So in that case, during winter season, the northern hemisphere winter, the wind is eastward in the stratosphere. So the eastward propagating waves are observed in the stratosphere. At the same time, the westward propagating waves are allowed to reach in the higher altitudes. So we can see the wave activities during winter in the mesospheric altitude. Similarly, during summer, the wind in the stratosphere is westward. So the westward propagating gravity waves are observed by the critical level filtering. The eastward propagating gravity waves can able to penetrate into the higher altitudes. But what happened to the equinoctial month? The equinoctial month, the wind in the background wind is very weak. So the upward propagating gravity waves are damped in the lower altitude itself. So before reaching the mesospheric altitude, it will damping in the lower altitude. That's what they explain. So then, what are the other mechanism? The deposition or the deposition of energy and momentum by the gravity waves. One is the gravity wave saturation. What is saturation? As you know, with respect to altitude, density of the atmosphere is decreasing exponentially. So once the waves are generated in the lower atmosphere, if it is propagating upward, their amplitude is increasing in the order of rho power minus 1 by 2. So in order to conserve the energy and the momentum, at a certain height, the amplitude will be maximum. So after that, it will started to deposits its energy and momentum to the ambient. The maximum amplitude attaining region is called the saturation altitude, and above the saturation altitude, the wave started to dissipate its momentum to the ambient till which is attaining the critical level filtering. Okay, so this way the energy momentum of the gravity wave is transferred into the background atmosphere. There are other processes for the breaking of the atmospheric gravity waves called the convective instability. What is convective instability? When there is a large temperature gradient in the ambient atmosphere, which can cause the breaking of the gravity, that is called the convective instability. Similarly, dynamical instability is another mechanism. When there is a large wind shear, for example, in the mesosphere, if there is more than 40 meters per second of wind shear, which can effectively break or dissipate the upward propagating gravity waves. There is one such a wonderful example was reported by Yamada et al. In 2001. You can see in these images, in the first image, there is a nice phase fronts, bright and dark band, and second image also it is continuing. The last, if you are seeing, the phase front started to dissipate. So then they carried out the further study, and they came to a conclusion that the breaking caused due to the dynamical instability, which means due to the wind shear. And the similar kind of interesting event we also noted over the low latitude station of Gadangi. You can see we have seen the wave event for 20 minutes. The third image, you can see there is a very nice phase front, bright and dark band, which is propagating towards northeast direction. You can see the middle panel, the wave structures are clear. And if you are coming to the bottom panel, within 20 or 15 minutes, the wave phase fronts are started to dissipate, and the within 20 minutes, the wave is completely disappeared in the ambient atmosphere. You see the wave parameters such as wavelength is 21 kilometer, phase speed is around 50 meter per second, the observed period is around 7 minutes, and the propagation angle is something, okay, 25 degree. So what would be the possible causative mechanism for generation of this wave breaking mechanism, wave breaking event? In order to understand that, we should have the background information, especially the temperature and wind. As I told, the convective instability is caused by the temperature, and the dynamical instability is caused by the wind measurement. So what we did, we got temperature information from the ground phase LiDAR as well as the Sabre measurements. You can see above 75 kilometers there is a increment in the temperature in the mesospheric altitude. I told in my first slide, in the mesosphere temperature will decrease with respect to altitude. However, at certain occasions, the temperature in the mesosphere is increasing with altitude. The increasing temperature is called as mesospheric inversion layers. So there is a mesospheric inversion layer observed on this night, and above that again the temperature is decreasing. Then if you are looking the wind structure, this is the first one is showing the zonal wind, meridional wind, and wind in the direction of wave propagation. If you are seeing the wind in the direction of wave propagation, the maximum is around 20 meter per second, but the wave phase speed is more around 50 meter per second. So the critical level filtering is ruled out. It cannot be critical level filtered. So either it can be break due to the convective instability or dynamical instability. So if it is convective instability, how we will identify? The one process, method is called to identify the static stability or Freund-Weisala frequency, which is nothing but the static stability of the atmosphere. When the Freund-Weisala frequency is less than 0, which shows the atmosphere is unstable. You can see the n square value around 92 kilometers shows the negative value. So the atmosphere is convectively unstable. And see, here also we compared before the event what is the condition of the atmosphere, after the event what is the condition of the atmosphere, using Sabre as well as the LiDAR measurement. So before the breaking event, the atmosphere is stable, but after the event, the atmosphere is unstable. So then it is a vertical wave number, square of the vertical wave number, that also shows negative value. And other important parameter which tells about the convective or dynamical instability is called the Richardson number, which is nothing but the ratio between the square of the Freund-Weisala frequency and the wind shear in the direction of wave propagation. So if the Richardson number is less than 0.25, which shows the dynamical instability. If the Richardson number is negative, then that is the convective instability. And if you are seeing the Richardson number, which is negative around 92 kilometers, so we came to a conclusion that the breaking event which we observed would be due to the convective instability. So it is the mesospheric gravity characteristics I told before. Now what is the characteristics of the gravity in the thermospheric altitude? So nowadays there are nice satellite measurements which can cover the globe nicely. The CHAMP is one of such a satellite which measures the density of the thermosphere around 250 kilometer altitude. From the density variance, they try to quantify the climatological variation of the density variance in the thermosphere in different seasons. You see the top one is for the equinox, and the middle one is June solstice, and the bottom one is December solstice. During equinox, thermospheric gravity wave activity is less over the mid and low latitudes, and during June solstice, the wave activities are more in the southern hemisphere, and December solstice, the wave activities are more in the northern hemisphere. So okay, so that's what the gravity wave dynamics in the MLT region and the thermosphere. Now I am going to talk about the various coupling processes, like how the gravity acting for other dynamical phenomena in the ionospheric altitudes. So if you are seeing this figure, it is just one cartoon. You can see various coupling processes, like the yellow lines denotes the lower atmospheric originated dynamic processes, and the white arrows denote the ion associated dynamical processes. You see there are large wave propagation zonally as well as meridionally from the high latitude to low latitude, and the plasma irregularities, the equatorial fountain effect, and the equatorial reverse fountain effect during the night time. All these phenomena are there. So the atmospheric system is controlled by the lower atmospheric forcing as well as the solar forcing. Especially the MLT region and thermosphere is complex because it is having both contribution highly from the lower atmosphere as well as the solar forcing. So what is equatorial plasma bubble? So equatorial plasma bubble is nothing but during the post sunset hours, there will be a large reduction in the electron density of the equatorial ionosphere. Those structures are called as the equatorial plasma bubbles. So how these plasma bubbles are looks like in the various observation. If you are seeing this ionosunday, the first one, it is called a spread F. And in the radar blooms, you can see very nice dynamical structure. This is the in the SNR. This is the plasma bubble structure in the radar measurement. If you are coming to the air glow measurement, there is a reduction in the density, air glow intensity, that is representing the equatorial plasma bubble. So what causes the equatorial plasma bubble? It is one of the dynamical. It forms a combination of electrodynamical as well as neutral interaction. Mostly, it is a complex processes. Most of the feature of these equatorial plasma bubbles are understood well. However, the day-to-day variation of occurrence of equatorial plasma bubble are not understood well. Still, it is a active research topic. So, how the equatorial plasma bubble is occurring and what is the role of gravity waves in the generation mechanism? That I will going to discuss now. See the cartoon. It is a meridional cross section of low latitude ionosphere. The horizontal line shows the geomagnetic equator, and vertical line is altitude, and the meridional line is the north-south direction. The dotted line indicate the magnetic field lines. There is a the dotted line indicate the magnetic field lines. There is a deviation between the actual geographic north and the magnetic north, that is called the declination. So what happened in the evening ionosphere? During the evening hours, there will be a enhancement in the eastward electric field. The combination of eastward electric field and the northward magnetic field lift up the F layer to higher altitude. You can see here the plasma is balanced between the downward gravitational force and the upward pressure gradient force. Okay, so this is giving the conducive background for the generation of equatorial plasma bubble. How? That I will discuss the next upcoming slides. So, and what causes the upliftment of the F layer? That process is called the pre-reversal enhancement. What is pre-reversal enhancement? What would be the possible mechanism for the pre-reversal enhancement? That I am going to discuss in the next slide. You see, this is a cartoon. The left side is denoting the day side, and the right side is denoting the night side. This is the horizontal plane is representing the E region, and the vertical plane is representing the F region. And during the sunset hours, the wind is flowing from west to east. So, due to which, as you know, during daytime, the E cross B drift is upward. That is the reason the plasma fountain is happening in the upward direction. In addition to that, the eastward neutral wind in the evening terminator causes a downward electric field E is set. So through magnetic field, that downward electric field is mapping to the E region, and the equator or component of the downward electric field generate a Hall current in the E region, westward directed Hall current. Due to this westward Hall current, there will be a negative charge accumulation in the terminator. So due to this negative charge accumulation, electric fields are generated in both sides, day side as well as night side. As you know, night side the electron concentration is less. So the day side eastward electric field is again mapping into the F region through magnetic field lines. So already you know there is a eastward electric field, and again from the E region it is mapping. So additional electric field enhancement will be happening. So that is the reason the evening hours the F layer is going very high. That is called the free reversal enhancement. Okay, if the free reversal enhancement is there, then what is the role of relative instability? How it is coming, and what is the role of gravity? Why should where the gravity role is coming into the picture? That I will going to explain now. Once the F layer is going up, and due to the evening sunset, there is no energy source from the up. I mean, there is solar energy from the upside. So the E region electron concentration is reducing drastically in the evening hour, in the after immediate sunset, due to which the high density plasma is lying over the low density plasma. So this kind of situation is called the Rayleigh-Taylor instability situation. Okay, if that is there, if there is any small perturbation in the bottom of the F layer, you can see the animation here. When there is a small perturbation in the bottom of the F layer, which can trigger the growth of the instability. For example, you see in this cartoon, left side cartoon, the gravity is acting downward. The magnetic field is pointing inside of the screen. The N2 is the low density plasma, N1 region is the high density plasma region. If there is the current is flowing in the eastward direction, if there is any small perturbation, due to this perturbation, there will be a discontinuity in the eastward current, so which will create the polarization electric field within the region. So if it is this place, the eastward polarization electric field is created. In this place, westward polarization electric field is created. The eastward polarization electric field will lift up the plasma, the low density region, and the westward polarization electric field will pull down the high density plasma. So this will create the equatorial plasma irregularities. So where the gravity wave is coming to the picture, there the gravity wave can be the seed perturbation, the initial perturbation for the generation of the equatorial plasma bubble. That is the current research topic. So then it is what I talked about the equatorial ionosphere. Then similarly in the mid latitude ionosphere, there is other processes called the traveling ionospheric disturbances. What is traveling ionospheric disturbances? Traveling ionospheric disturbances are wave-like a fluctuation in the electron density induced by the neutral atmospheric gravity waves. So these traveling ionospheric disturbances are divided into two categories based on their scale sizes. One is large scale traveling ionospheric disturbances, another one is the medium scale traveling ionospheric disturbances. The large scale traveling ionospheric disturbances are having period from 30 minutes to 3 hours, and the horizontal speed is varying from 400 meter per second to 1000 meter per second. The horizontal wavelength of the large scale traveling ionospheric disturbances are more than 1000 kilometers. On the other hand, medium scale traveling ionospheric disturbances, which are having period from 15 minutes to 90 minutes, and the horizontal phase speed is varying from 100 meter per second to 250 meter per second. The horizontal wavelength of these medium scale traveling ionospheric disturbances are several hundreds of kilometers, maybe from 200 kilometers to 500 kilometers in the statistics. So why should we have to study about the medium scale traveling atmospheric disturbances? This is similar kind of disturbances like equatorial plasma bubble, but the depletions are very small. A recent report suggests that the mid-latitude originated MSADs even can propagate into the low latitude. If it is coming to the low latitude, it can act as a seed perturbation for the midnight equatorial freedom, which is a prominent feature in the low solar activity summertime, especially June, July, August time. So there are studies which show that this MSAD can be the seed perturbation for the mid-latitude midnight equatorial plasma bubble. And at the same time, in 2012, there was a study by Otsuka et al. What they have shown that when there is an interaction between the MSAD and the equatorial plasma bubble, the MSAD can effectively dissipate the equatorial plasma bubble. That was their report. So the question is, what is the role of MSAD in the when there is a in the case of equatorial plasma bubble? Is it generating the equatorial plasma bubble, or it is dissipating the equatorial plasma bubble? If it is generating, at what circumstance? If it is dissipating, at what circumstance? There is no quantification of this interaction. And similarly, the MSADs which is generating in the geomagnetic storm time, which have a large TEC perturbation, even up to 20 TEC value. The 20 TEC value is common in the equatorial plasma bubble, but the MSAD perturbation may be 2 TEC, 0.2 TEC or 1 TEC, but this much high TEC perturbation, how it is happening, that also not known well. So it is important to know the plasma bubble and other plasma irregularities to understand the ionospheric variation, so that we can use to mitigate the satellite-based navigation communication systems. So how to measure the medium scale traveling ionospheric disturbances? Please note here that there are two kinds of medium scale traveling ionospheric disturbances. One is daytime medium scale traveling ionospheric disturbances, and another is nighttime medium scale traveling ionospheric disturbances. They are entirely different features, because the nighttime traveling ionospheric disturbances are electrified in nature, but the daytime traveling ionospheric disturbances are, like as I told in my definition, it is a manifestation of gravity wave in the ionospheric altitude. You see how the MSAD's nighttime MSAD looks. You can see there is this is a chain of air glow observation over the Japanese sector. There is a dark and bright bands. Notice this is representing the MSADs. If you are seeing the phase front alignment, which is always almost aligned in the northwest to southeast direction and propagating towards southwest direction. This is the unique feature of the nighttime medium scale traveling ionospheric disturbances. This the MSAD structure in the TEC perturbation over Japanese sector also you can see here. There are several instruments which are used to measure the TEC, the MSADs, like HF radar, ionosonde, GPS network, and airglow imager. So far what we know about the MSADs. The MSAD occurrence are generally higher during winter daytime and the summer nighttime. And nighttime MSADs are identified to be geometrically conjugated in nature, which means if you are seeing the MSAD in one hemisphere, you can expect the MSAD structure in the other hemisphere also. Then the nighttime MSAD at mid latitudes disappears when it is interacting with the equatorial ionization anomaly crust. But so far we don't know what is the threshold level of ionization anomaly crust which is stop the MSAD. And then the occurrence of MSADs are high during the solar minimum, then the solar maximum. So what we don't know about the mid latitude nighttime MSADs, whether the source of the generation of the MSAD is due to gravity waves or Perkins instability. So here I want to tell what is Perkins instability. which is nothing but, if you are considering the mid-latitude ionosphere, you know, in the equatorial ionosphere, the magnetic field lines are horizontal to the to the ground. But if you are going to the mid latitude, the magnetic fields are tilted. So the balance of the flyer is controlled by the southward, equatorward moving wind and eastward electric field. Okay, if there is any change in the equatorward propagating flowing wind or the eastward electric field, there will be a unstable in the mid latitude F layer. That is called Parkinson instability. And the source of the gravity is whether E and F region coupling processes or the geometric storm or space weather event, that we don't know exactly, and what processes are controlling the generation of the nighttime MSTD. And what is the role of MSTD in the low latitude equatorial plasma occurrence? As I explained in my important slide, whether it is generating the EPP or it is dissipating the EPP, at what condition it is generating and what condition it is dissipating, those things need to be quantitatively measured. Then what is the characteristics of geomagnetic storm time MSTD? That is also not known well. So, and keeping this in mind, recently we have got one interesting observation over the low latitude. On 12 January 2006, over Gadangi, we have seen the MSTD structure. The electrified MSTD structure, you can see the hello. The MSTD structure, which the phase front is aligned in the northwest to southeast direction, and it is moving towards southwest direction. It is observed over Gadangi. If you are seeing the Gadangi latitude, it is 13.5 degree by degree north. Geomagnetically, it is around 6 degree north. But as I told, the MSTDs are confined in the mid latitude. But with this observation, we could be able to see in the low latitude also. So then we try to explore what could be the possible reason and how this low latitude propagation happened. Then we check, this is for a more clear picture, you can see. During this night, we not only observed the MSTD, we also observed other wave phenomena, like we characterized into two ways. One is the quasi-periodic southward moving waves. You can see there is southward moving bands. It is a kilogram. Kilogram is nothing but just taking one strip of a particular image, either in north-south direction or east-west direction. The left panel shows the east-west. Sorry, the top panel shows the east-west kilogram. The actual image, it is the residual image, and the bottom panel shows the north-south kilogram. The north-south kilogram shows there is a southward propagating disturbances, which is we categorize as the quasi-periodic southward moving waves. And if you are seeing the images around 23 to 25 Indian Standard Time, there is an enhancement in the 630 nanometer emission, which may be the midnight brightness wave or midnight density maximum, something like that. We are not sure. And in addition to this wave structure, we also notice another wave structure which is propagating southward. The phase front you can see. So on this night, we have seen three phenomena. One is the southwestward moving MSTD and southward moving quasi-periodic waves, and another small scale southward moving waves. These three phenomena, these are the characteristics, like at what time the MSTD is noticed, at what time the quasi-periodic southward moving is noticed, and what time the small scale southward moving is noticed. You can see MSTD is noticed between 22 to 23 Indian Standard Time. This is the wavelength 160 kilometer, and the phase speed is around 140 meter per second, and the period of the MSTD is around 20 minutes. It was moving southwest direction. So and we have doubt. You can ask, maybe it also like a southwestward moving, it also some kind of wave activity. We may misunderstand with the MSTD activity. In order to confirm that, we also check other station. Yeah. We also checked other station over Allahabad, over Ranchi, over Indian sector. So there we could able to see the MSTD which is moving southwestward direction. So which there we have seen the MSTD around 6 or 7 around 7 IST, but here we are seeing around 10 or 22 IST, which means it will take around 3 hours to propagate from Ranchi to Gadangi. So which confirms that it is MSTD, not some other waves. So then this is the Allahabad image. You can see MSTDs on the time. So then we want to know whether any previous reports are there, these kind of things. Then we compared with a previous study by Thauri et al. 2016. There they used 3 location airglow imager. They could see only the MSTD structure over Ranchi, not over Kolhapur or Gadangi. Gadangi they have seen, they have noticed only the equatorial plasma bubbles. So then we try to understand what could be the possible reason. Then we checked the electron density over the globe as well as the Indian sector during the 2 nights. One, our case is 12 January 2006. The earlier case is 19 March 2012. If you are seeing the zoomed portion of the Indian sector, the ionization anomaly on 12 January is weak. At the same time, on 19th March 2012, the ionization anomaly is very strong. So that could be one possible reason. On March 19th, 2012, when the Thauri et al. Would see only the MSTD in the Ranchi, not over Gadangi or Kolhapur. But in our case, the ionization anomaly is weak. That could be the reason we could able to see the MSTD even Allahabad as well as the Gadangi. So from that, we conclude that if the ionization anomaly is very weak, the mid-latitude generated plasma bubble, the MSTD can penetrate into the low latitude, even as low as 3.5 degree geomagnetic latitude. So far, this is what my presentation is.
Shiva, sorry, the previous slide, what kind of data is this?
This is total electron from CEDAWeb. Hello?
Sorry, this is what? The ionospheric maps or what is
Yeah,
this?
it is a total electron content, TEC.
Yeah, from GNSS receiver, I mean.
Yes. Global GNSS receivers.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, welcome. So there my presentation over. So I want to discuss some of the unresolved problem. What are they? For example, in the MLT region, quantification of gravity role in the formation of mesospheric inversion layer. I mean, there is a temperature enhancement in the mesospheric region, and even that temperature enhancement goes as high as 50 to 60 Kelvin, which is very huge. Whether it could not explain alone by tides or by gravity waves or by photochemical heating, which means it is the combination of all these 3 processes, which is not quantified so far. Similarly, the quantification of predominant wave breaking mechanism in the MLT region, whether it is due to the convective instability or whether it is due to the dynamic instability, that is not done so far. And other thing is, are the gravity waves observed in the MLT region, especially in the airglow images, whether it is primary gravity waves or secondary gravity waves, and what is the exact source of the gravity waves, which is not understood quantitatively. So, and wave mean flow interaction and their role in the generation of secondary waves, that also can be taken as a research problem. And gravity wave, planetary wave, and gravity wave tidal interaction and their impact on the mesospheric dynamics are the current research activity. If you are coming to the ionosphere, the quantification of role of gravity in the seeding of equatorial plasma bubble. I mean, at what condition, when, and what should be the wavelength, phase speed, exactly we are not sure. But there are some studies, of course, there are some case studies, but we didn't do so far the quantification. Yeah. And to explore the role of gravity in the day-to-day variability of daytime medium-scale traveling and disturbances, actually this problem I am currently working on. And to quantify the role of gravity in the generation of nighttime electrified MSIDs, and other problem like to explore the interaction between MSIDs and equatorial ionization anomaly. As I told, when the MSID is propagating towards equator, when the ionization anomalies are present, the interaction between ionization anomaly and MSID dissipates the MSIDs. But at what is the threshold level of the ionization anomaly which can stop the which can dissipate the MSIDs not established well, so which need to be done. And to quantify the role of MSID in the formation or dissipation of the equatorial plasma bubble, that also quantitatively we have to understand. So that's all. This is the thing I told you, the interaction between the plasma bubble and the MSIDs, which dissipate the equatorial plasma bubble. And the other thing is during the geomagnetic storm time, we can see this is one of the interesting event. It is very well studied storm, the 2015 geomagnetic storm, Stein-Patrick geomagnetic storm. We can see in the evening hours the plasma bubble was moving towards east or drifting towards east in the beginning, but within 1 hour it started to drift towards west. So how, whether the electric field change, the vertical electric field change could be the possible reason, or those things need to be studied. Okay, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Sivakanda. Congratulations for the presentation. You put together a lot of atmospheric phenomena related with gravity waves. And now you have time for questions. Who wants to make question for Sivakanda? Please type.
Of course, I'm the first person.
As we have Patrick Essien, the first one, please go ahead.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, maybe the first one may not be a question. What is known? You said something about the MSID in relation to solar cycle, that is higher in solar maximum and low in solar minimum. I think the previous slide, you made us understand that MSID, we have the day and the night MSIDs, in which the ionospheric conditions are different. So in this high in solar maximum and low in solar maximum, I think it's limited to the night time, because in night time, very good. In night time, what do you call it? The D region, E region are not there, so the MSID can easily propagate to the F region. Is different. During daytime, the E region is there, the D region is there, so the absorption rate, okay, of the gravity waves or the dissipation of the gravity wave in the thermosphere is very high. So that one, you need to take note of that. And then another thing is, you said something like the gravity waves propagating into the ionosphere in the mid-latitude ionosphere as MSIDs is true. But what about the low latitude and then the equatorial ionospheres? Because we have so many frontal systems in the low latitude and equatorial region, which also generate gravity waves, and then probably propagate to the ionosphere to see the, what do you call it?
Yes, that is true. Yeah, there is a study by Fushima et al. 2012 and 2009 over using the Indonesian airglow images. They could be able to see the more amount of wave activity in the 630 nanometer images in the over the equatorial region also.
Yeah, very good. And then you also limited the nighttime MSID to only Perkins instability, which might not be what do you call it, limited to only that, because in Brazilian equatorial region, I think South American equatorial region, Makela, Paulino himself, and then other authors have observed some MSCIDs in which the propagation direction has nothing to do with the Parkins instability, you know.
Yes, so, yes. Actually, I am. Can I talk one thing?
Yeah.
In the Perkins instability does not talk about which direction it should propagate. So far, we are seeing that the direction of propagation of the MSIDs are fixed. We don't know what could be the. what is the exact mechanism which decides that particular direction? But people are assuming that it could, due to the Perkins instability, there are two possibilities. Either it can propagate towards southwest or northeast. So not only that, now recently there are studies which is suggesting that the sporadic E in the E region and the coupling with the F region can be the one possible reason for the directional propagation of, the southwestward propagation of the MSID.
Because I'm saying that because when you read Makela 2000 and then Otsuka 2012, 2011, they all made it emphatically that the Parkins instability linking to the MSCID in the what do you call it, ionosphere is as a result of their propagation direction. Even they came to say that the velocity and the propagation velocity or the phase velocity of the MSCID comparing to that of the Parkins instability drift are not coherent, because the MSCID velocities are very high as compared to the Parkins stability. But because of its propagation direction, it's a possible sources. So in Makela's paper and Paulino's paper, they stated critically that, or categorically that, because of the propagation directions of the MSCIDs they observe in the equatorial region during night time, it probably has nothing to do with the Parkins instability. That is why I said that. So it's like a quote.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. Yes, I don't have.
And also, my last comment, I think you stated something like MSCID can propagate from 15 minutes to 90 minutes. I was expecting to see some, what do you call it, reference to that, because all the papers I've come across, they talk about up to 1 hour. And then also, you limited the wavelength rather to 1,000, in which I've seen some papers talking about 1,500 kilometers.
Actually, that MSID, you know, that characteristics itself, if you are seeing the airglow images, there are so much quantification about the wavelength of the MSIDs. Like Shiokawa et al. 2003 and 2003 they have one statistical paper, and Martinez et al. 2010 they have quantified the wavelength using the airglow imageries around 200 to 500 for the MSIDs. But if it is exceeding more than 1,000, it can be the LSTIDs, which is very fast moving than the MSIDs.
Okay, last one. I want to ask, how does the observation using Oscar imager affect the seasonal variation? Because, you know, you talk about the seasonal variation, it's occurring in these days, it's occurring in these days. Meanwhile, I think it depends on the number of days you observe in a particular season, okay? So it could be that, so can you explain that one? In relation to
I agree with you. Actually, optical instrument cannot be carried throughout the year, because when there is a clear sky, we need clear sky and cloud-free nights. But if there is a full rain and all, then the seasonal variation cannot be done. But the same thing when you are using the GPS observation. GPS observation can be carried out throughout the year. So once you are comparing the GPS observation and the airglow observation, which shows that the activity, the MSID activities are more during the summer than the equinox, like that. The nighttime MSIDs.
Don't you think that the variation of MSCID in the ionosphere is more of latitudinal or longitudinal? Don't they have that latitudinal variation or longitudinal variation? Or you think that?
Yes.
Oh, very good.
it is having latitudinal variation. For example, the mid-latitude MS which is propagating southwestward direction. But if you are going to the high latitude, the direction of propagation itself changing. Either it is westward or sometimes it is northward also noticed and eastward also noticed. So it is not fixed. But once it is confined to the mid-latitude, the feature which whatever I told, it is more acceptable than the other latitudes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you. We have another question. Ethan Clark, please.
Yeah. Thank you for the talk. It was really wonderful. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. My question is about Whistler mode waves and the interactions with equatorial plasma bubbles. It's been found that in the midst of the equatorial plasma bubbles, Whistler mode waves will cause acute heating that can generate electromagnetic ion cyclotron waves. And it's also been found that some of these ground-based very low frequency transmitters can create these Whistler mode waves. And I'm wondering if there's a potential interaction that equatorial plasma bubbles and the generation of EMIC waves might have with these ground-based VLF transmitters, especially seeing how the angle of the ionosphere, especially in between the day-night region, the angle there, and also on the side of the equatorial ionization anomaly, the angle when it's more perpendicular interacts more with Whistler mode waves. Is there a possible interaction, maybe, do you think?
To be honest, I don't have that much experience on this EMIC waves.
Yeah.
And I think it is magnetospheric originated, that only I know, but in the ionosphere, I am not sure. Sorry.
Okay. I have another question.
Yeah, if you have some reference, I am very eager to read it. Please, you can share.
Yeah. Perhaps I can share with you a little bit more later.
Thank you.
The other thing I was wondering is in South China Sea, there have been a lot of GPS issues causing ships to circle in that area. That is, the South China Sea is a conjugate from one of the largest very low frequency transmitters in Australia. And that particular transmitter has been found to be interacting with the Chinese power grid. So I'm wondering, because large horseshoe arcs can form between the north and the south hemisphere in the ionospheric plasma, could it be that some of the wave activity from that transmitter could be actually interacting with the GPS scintillation that's happening in the South China Sea? Again, this might be a...
Yeah, I mean that artificial wave interaction you are telling. I mean the transmitter from the southern Chinese thing.
Yeah, the Whistler mode waves can get ducted through the plasma plumes, the arcs that form right there along the equatorial plasma bubble region. And so I'm wondering how that might interact with GPS scintillation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know how it. Yes.
It's okay. Thank you. I really appreciated your talk. It was wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Any more questions, comments? Sivakananda, you said that one of the challenges for the future, for the study in the coupling of the atmosphere about the generation of the equatorial plasma bubble by gravity wave, you said that it's important we quantify the effect of the gravity wave in the generation of the plasma bubble, but we don't know very well how this process, the coupling process occurs primarily in the equatorial region. Of course, we have some simulation that can using gravity wave to trigger equatorial plasma bubble. However, there are a lot of how can I say, a lot of studies that suggest different kinds of interaction of the gravity waves with equatorial plasma bubble. For instance, some works by Fritz, he has proposed that the gravity waves in the middle and low latitude can act in the generation of the gravity wave if this gravity wave can propagate using the magnetic field line up to the F region. So I guess we have to understand better the coupling mechanism between the gravity waves and the plasma bubble before quantify it. Okay?
Yeah. Yes. We have to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is it.
Any more question, comments? I have a question about the gravity waves. You type a lot of future work or challenge for the new student that you can, for example, you can see a lot of things that you can study about the gravity waves. What do you think that is the most important topic of research among them?
In my point of view, I feel the two things, like the wave mean flow interaction and their role in the generation of secondary waves, and the quantification of the predominant wave breaking mechanism in the MLT region. So why I am telling this can be at least carried out with the existing instruments, but the remaining problems little more difficult.
Yes. For example, how about secondary gravity waves? How can we measure? How can we make a kind of campaign or experiment to go further on this topic?
Yeah, as you know already, there are some good papers by Vadas and Pecker. They mostly use the model over the Andes region and Antarctica region. So they have proposed some mechanisms like multi-step process, and the fish bone kind of structures are noticed when the secondary waves are forming, that kind of situation. In that case, we can try to use the radar and the images. So then we can try to see what kind of frequencies are existing vertically, and the same frequencies from lower to higher it is existing, and where is the frequency stopping. After that, any new frequencies are coming or not, like that kind of information we can get from radar. And using images, it is very rare. If suppose luckily if we are getting, then we can see any such a kind of waves are there or not. Especially now, people are believing that the short period which we are seeing in the images could be mostly secondary wave than the primary wave.
Okay, thank you. We have a question. Frank, please go ahead.
Yeah, please.
Frank, I guess your microphone is switched off. Frankie, your microphone is switched off, please.
You can type your question, I think.
Yeah.
He can type his question if mic is not working.
Use the chat, please. Let's move on and more. Okay. What's the interaction between the geomagnetic storm and MES?
No, I mean, there is no interaction. That the geomagnetic storm can be a potential source for the generation of MSJDs. For example, in the high latitude, when the storm occurs, people notice a lot of large-scale traveling atmospheric disturbances. So that is well known. But we don't know how the geomagnetic storms having role on the MSJD generation, whether it is really having some role, if it is having what kind of role, that we don't know. Hello, Frank, did you cut my point?
Okay. Any more questions? No. If you don't have more questions, I would like to thank you to Dr. Sivakumar for the interesting talk. We appreciate your time. It's getting later in Japan right now, but we would thank to the audience as well. It was a good talk, a good opportunity to talk about the graft waves. In our program of Master in Physics, we have some students that certainly your talk, your presentation was an opportunity to them learn about some process interaction of the graft wave with another phenomena. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the audience. So
yeah, thank you.
Please.
Yeah, thank you so much for the nice opportunity to Professor Paulino and Douglas Victoretti. Thank you so much, and all the audience also to listening this talk. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steven.